Hello and welcome to what we hope to be a series of talks about some battles in and around and related to Lincoln Castle. First one will be the 1141, the Battle of Lincoln. There's 1217, that's a bit complicated, so I might split that into two, and 1644, the last time the castle was involved in a battle. So we could start with the Battle of Lincoln, 1141, but to give a face to this voice, I thought I'd find a picture of me at Lincoln Castle. We're on lockdown at the moment, so I couldn't go up and do a photo shoot. So the only picture I could find is me before I worked at the castle at one of our fabulous event days, and some reenactor has foolishly lent me their helmet and sword. So you can't really see my face, but there you go. There's me in Lincoln Castle with a sword. The 1141 battle happened during the Anarchy, and the Anarchy was a period of conflict where there were two people arguing over who should rule England. Henry I. Now, Henry I was the son of William the Conqueror, the Norman that took over England, and he wanted to be a bridge builder. He wanted to get the country back together so it didn't feel like Normans and English, but bond them into one nation. So he married Matilda. Now, this is one of the many Matildas. There's too many Matildas in this story. Matilda of Scotland. She had was descended because the Scottish royal family had married into the English royal family some time ago, and she was descended from the old line of Wessex, the old English kings of people like Edward the Confessor and Alfred the Great. So he marries her. Their offspring would be a bit Norman and a bit English, descended from the Dukes of Normandy and from the old English kings. So they had a son, and they called him William, but William Atheling, and Atheling is an old English word meaning prince. And the idea was William would have the blood of these two households, and he would bring the country together. Unfortunately, the plan went horribly wrong. William and his mates were out in Normandy because obviously his dad's Duke of Normandy and King of England. They're in Normandy, and they decide to get very, very drunk, and then decide to sail back at night. And not only should you not drink and drive, you should never drink and try and operate a medieval sailing ship. Ship sinks and William drowns. So Henry then had decided he wanted his daughter to take over, but when he died, Stephen of Blois, his nephew, who is over in France, comes over and takes over the throne, and Stephen makes himself King of England. Now Matilda, not the mother, the daughter, is not very happy. She'd been promised the throne, so the civil war started between the two rivals, and this is the Anarchy. Matilda on one side, who thought she should rule because of her father was king, and Stephen, who's taken over the throne. And the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle talks this terrible time of never before was there more wretchedness in the land. They said that the Christ and his saints slept, so God had sort of forsaken them as terrible things happened in these wars. Now the prologue to our battle starts with a little bit of subterfuge, and this is a nice picture below a little draft of Sheila Sanchez's for her book, which is sadly out of print, which tells the story. The castle and the city have been seized by Matilda, then recovered by Stephen, and this happens. Castles and towns and areas fall one point under the control of one side and then under the control of the other. Stephen's in charge of the castle, and Earl Ranulph, the Earl of Chester, who's loyal to Matilda, is one of Matilda's supporters, and most of her supporters were in the sort of west of the country. Him and his half-brother decide to capture Lincoln Castle. Rather than attacking it or siege it, they thought, let's use trickery. So what they did was they sent the wives in to chat with the wife of the commander of the garrison. So the wives came up and said, oh, we know her husbands and are arguing, but we all know each other, and the nobility all know each other in this period. Can we come in?" And they have a chat with the wife of the commander. Now Ranulph leaves them there for quite a bit of time, quite deliberately, and then goes up to the gate and says, "Look, I haven't got my sword or my shield on. I'm completely unarmed, and I know we're on different sides, but I really need to get the wives out, and I really need to get them to stop this huge long chat." And the gatekeeper foolishly lets them in. Him and his mates grab some iron bars, overpower the gatekeeper. Their other soldiers storm the castle, and Earl Ranulph has got control of Lincoln Castle from Matilda. Lovely image there of the battle in the medieval chronicles. Now, Ranulph, he is a supporter of Matilda. He's in the castle. Stephen comes up with the massive army, besieges the castle, and takes the rest of the town of Lincoln. Okie dokie. So Ranulph thinks, right, I better go and get help. So he escapes. He creeps out the castle and goes to the West Country to find Robert, the Earl of Gloucester. Robert, Earl of Gloucester, is the big supporter of Matilda. Now, Robert of Gloucester, his daughter is called, guess what? It's Matilda, but we'll use her nickname Maud. His daughter is married to Ranulph, and Robert of Gloucester's daughter is now stuck in this castle, surrounded by Stephen and his army. And Robert of Gloucester goes, right, I'm going to race across the country to rescue my daughter. Robert gathers forces from the southwest. Ranulph gathers troops from Cheshire, and this pro-Matilda army marches across the country to tackle Stephen, who's besieging the castle. The Trent's in flood, but Robert goes, I'm not leaving my daughter in difficulty, and he swims across the river. It's the middle of winter, remember, so middle of winter, river's in flood, and all the rest of them go, well, if he can do it, we can do it. Stephen, on the other hand, is at when they arrive, he's at a religious ceremony with the Bishop Alexander of Lincoln. The tapir, which is the candle, breaks. The pyx, which the chain holding the pyx, which is the box where the host or the bread or the body of Christ is, that breaks as well. And everyone goes, "Oh, these are terrible, terrible omen." So how did they line up? Well, remember, in the castle is Matilda's supporters. Stephen's supporters are around and about. They've got hold of the city, and they are also holding off the castle to the west. Robert's army comes marching up, crosses the Fosdyke. Stephen there, he calls on his supporters to come and give his support. Not enough cavalry turns up as he expected. And some of Stephen's supporters run away a lot. They seem to be very good at oppressing people and getting taxation out of them to fight these wars, which causes all the oppression the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle talks about. But his supporters seem to be very less good at fighting in a pitched battle. So Stephen's there, on his right, Alan the Black, a Breton, and on his left, William of Ypres. Now, Robert on his flanks has got some Welsh troops. No offence to anyone Welsh, but these troops weren't heavily armed, so they weren't the best top rank of troops. Robert, in his vanguard in the front, puts the dispossessed people, noblemen who have lost their lands and their titles and their castles, because Stephen's made sure he's put his supporters in. Stephen's cavalry charge and scatter the Welsh, but then in turn they're driven from the field by Ranulph, the Earl of Chester, seems to be rather easily, and they charge up the hill and attack and surround Stephen's infantry. Now, King Stephen, at this point, should have kept the receipts for his weaponry, because I think statutory retail law that if something's not fit for purpose and you've got proof of purchase, you should be able to get your money back, because Stephen's left alone. He's fighting with an axe and his axe broke. Told you he should have kept his receipts. Then he's fighting with takes out a sword and his sword breaks. This is why when anyone makes replica swords, they talk about the importance of tempering the blade and all this sort of thing, because if a sword breaks in the middle of battle, you're not going to go to your opponent, oop, can we delay to next week while I get a new sword? So you want to make sure your sword doesn't break in battle. William de Chesney grabs Stephen, says, I've got the king, he's taken prisoner, and they take him over to Bristol. And the southwest is, as I said, where Matilda's supporters are based. Robert of Gloucester's base is obviously Gloucester. Old Ranulph the Earl of Chester, his base is Chester and Cheshire. So they take Stephen, and that should have been the end of the war. Matilda should have been then made queen. The city was pillaged after the battle. The city is pillaged after every single battle. It's not an unusual thing. You don't pay your troops. What you do is if you win the battle, you say, hey, go rampant and steal everything you want. So bloodshed should have ended, but Robert of Gloucester's captured, and the prisoners are swapped. Basically, Matilda can't rule without Robert of Gloucester, so she agrees to swap with Stephen to get Robert of Gloucester back, which means both sides have got their chief knight, leader of their armies, and so the fighting can all start again. Hoorah! Stephen comes back, tries to besiege the castle. There, where the lawns are now, there used to be an earthwork, which is called Battle Piece, and it was traditionally thought to be a piece of siege engineering for Stephen. Outside lots of castles in England, you sometimes get a counter castle where they were besieged during the anarchy, and so what you do is to keep your troops secure when you're trying to block off and siege another castle, you build a sort of mini castle outside. Without archaeological investigations, we cannot tell if this is indeed dates to this period, but it's entirely possible. So they're trying to tunnel under into Lincoln Castle, which is of course still held by Matilda's supporters, and the tunnel collapses and he gives up. Then Ranulph is captured, and that allows Stephen, because Ranulph controls the castle, that allows Stephen to get control of the castle. Stephen spends a nice Christmas in Lincoln. Ranulph is released and tries to retake the castle, but is defeated. And then in 1153, the Treaty of Winchester is agreed. So Matilda says, right, I'll stop trying to defeat Stephen if you say my son will become the heir when you die. And Stephen agrees to this. Following year, Stephen dies, and Matilda's son Henry becomes Henry II. Now, I hope you've enjoyed this little talk. The images we've used, we've endeavoured to use images that licensed to us copyright free, public domain or Creative Commons, or we hold the copyright to, or the copyright holder's given us permission to use. Inadvertently used an image you believe you hold the copyright to, please contact us. Thank you very much for listening. Hope to do a few more of these talks about battles at Lincoln Castle. And that was the Battle of Lincoln. Thank you very much.